And thank you for joining us. You're listening to Ask the Governor. This is show number 92. One more to go after this one. The governor has been with us every month since April of 2016. So it has been quite an 8 years with him and governor and as governor, and he has had to veer from one crisis to another. And he is here to answer your questions again at 877-217-5757. 54 days left in his administration. Jeff Landry takes the oath of office on the 8th day of January, and Governor John Bel Edwards will depart as the 56th governor of Louisiana. And I know he is a governor who likes the job. There have been other governors I've seen through the years who have seemed to be tortured by the demands of the job. It is probably, as governors go, the most demanding position in America, the way our Constitution works. But you have enjoyed it through all these crises, and some would say that says something about you. But there aren't many people, I think, who would have handled pandemics and natural disasters and other things the way you have. But you have lived to talk and lived to fight another day. Your thoughts about, as we look back with 54 days to go, your thoughts about where we are and where you've been.
Wow. So, first of all, thank you, Jim. It's good to be back with you and all the listeners. And I appreciate the opportunity you've given me for 92 consecutive months to come on and share my thoughts and ideas, but also to answer questions and to hear from people from all over the state and sometimes from Texas. But it's been a great experience. And I was telling you before we went on the air, certainly not every day has been fun. Some days have just been so challenging, not so much to me personally, but to our state. But overall, I have very much enjoyed the experience. I feel just a tremendous sense of privilege to be able to do this job, to be reelected by the people after what started off as a very tough time with the record deficit, and the disasters that came in the first term. But overall, anytime you do something in life, you want to make sure that you do the best job you can, and that you leave things better than you found them. I am 100% certain that in many very significant ways, by objective measure, our state is much better off than it was the day I became governor. And to have done that during this challenging period, and to done it in a bipartisan way, I'm just very proud of that. And I thank all the people in the legislature, the local governmental leaders, the business leaders, nonprofit sector, for working with us to make it happen. And it shows that it is still possible in our country, and certainly here in Louisiana.
You have done it with a legislature largely dominated by the opposition party. The new governor, Jeff Landry, will take office with what amounts to a supermajority from his party. And so in many ways, he'll have options you did not. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it will obviously be easier for him, at least initially, to do things that he wants to do. But it will also be easier for him to do things in ways that are not scrutinized and debated properly and studied and so forth. So I just hope that there will be enough independence in the legislature and that they have to have conversations, rather than moving too quickly and prematurely on certain things. For example, that they would take their time, make sure that they're making the best decision. Hopefully that will happen. I tell people all the time, look, I'm staying in Louisiana. I've got children here. I'm going to have a business here. I'm going to have grandchildren here. I really want our state to succeed, and you can't have a successful state if you don't have successful leadership, especially in the governor's office. So I'm pulling for him and praying for him and Sharon and so forth. I'm but at the end of the day, I really hope that he will carefully measure things that he wants to do and really look at the success that we've been able to achieve in a variety of areas, and hopefully, at least on the most important of those areas and those achievements, that we would more or less see things remain headed in the same direction.
I'm told you had a nice conversation with him last
Yeah.
week. How's the transition?
I did have a good conversation with him. I intend to sit down and meet with him next week, and have additional discussions. The transition, from my perspective, is going very well. I had a cabinet meeting this week. We had been discussing this with inside the governor's office and with my cabinet level officials for several months, and preparing for the transition by putting together certain information, briefings, if you will, because what I don't want to happen is for the new every day there critical decisions have to be made, and so when they come into office on January the 8th, there are going to be some things that are going to be on the 2 yard line, and I don't want them to be surprised. And we also want to furnish them all the information that we have that we think is relevant, and of course, if they ask for more information, we'll do that as well. Those meetings have started. Primarily this week, between my cabinet officials and folks on the transition team. And so I believe, I will tell you, it's the sort of transition I wish that we would have had coming into office 8 years ago. But I think it's important that you do this, because I mean we still have a job to do, and right now one of those jobs in my administration is to have a coordinated, robust transition, and we take that very seriously.
And 8 years ago, you're saying you did not have much connection to the outgoing administration.
Well, it wasn't zero connection, but it wasn't organized the way that we have been. And of course, it was largely focused on the fiscal situation of the state that was deteriorating every single day.
We will go to the phone lines in short order. You're listening to the 92nd edition of Ask the Governor. Governor John Bel Edwards, one of the few, if any, governors in America who does a monthly show. And your number is 877-217-5757. You're listening to the 92nd edition of Ask the Governor, and we want to thank Jerry Mayer of Hometown Productions, who's been with us for every one of these. And he, of course, has trailed the governor in many other venues, but he's been in this studio month after month and presents a program that I'm sure some of you are watching, and for those listening, you can watch it on cable systems across Louisiana. But hats off to Jerry Mayer and his fine staff. 877-217-5757 is your number for Ask the Governor. Robin Dow is producing, and before we go to the phones, there is an election this Saturday, and 3 statewide offices are on the ballot. There is a runoff, all between Democrats and Republicans, for treasurer, for Secretary of State, for Attorney General. Those are important races. But with the turnout only 35.6% in the first election on October 14th, it's hard to be optimistic about turnout now. I imagine you've already voted, haven't you?
I have not. I'm going to vote Election Day.
So you'll have to go home.
I'll be going home. I plan to do that anyway. But I can assure you that I will vote. And I'm always hopeful that people will vote in larger numbers than is expected. I hope the people of our state can look back and say, 35.6% in the primary, that's just unsatisfactory. And we need more people to participate in the process, to take it seriously, and not just to vote, but to vet candidates and learn more about them and their position on the issues and that sort of thing. And so I'm encouraging everybody in Louisiana, if you have not voted early in this general election, please get out Saturday and vote in person, as I'm going to do back in Tangipahoa Parish. It's just too important, and I know that many of the races were decided, and so typically you have fewer people vote if you have less races on the ballot. But we just have to vote in larger numbers. I don't know. I'm just so disappointed in those numbers, and just about everybody that I talk to is, and it's quite hard to understand because we have so much at stake in these elections, and who the leaders are, and their priorities are going to be and what policies they're going to push and implement and so forth. So please get out and vote on Saturday.
And this has not always been the case in Louisiana. We certainly vote heartily when there's a presidential election. But to put it in perspective, we had many fewer people in the state and fewer voters in 1995. But Cleo Fields in 1995, in a race won handsomely by Mike Foster, received more votes in defeat than Jeff Landry received in victory, and that's not the way it should be.
It's not, and I don't know. I mean, it is so foreign to me that I can't simply contemplate. I can't understand why people wouldn't want to be more involved and exercise their right to vote at every single opportunity. It doesn't really matter to me if there's one issue on the ballot and it's about a tax for a mosquito abatement district in Tashville Parish.
You vote.
I vote, and I just hope people will get back to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Anecdotally, I've got a lot of young people tell me, you have access to so much with your smartphone. You can stream a movie, you can watch your television show, you can search the internet, and they tell me, well, if you really want me to vote, you'll make it possible so I can vote on my phone. Well, come on. We also need them to take their responsibilities, because you don't just have a right to vote. There's a corollary responsibility, and I think that they need to do that.
The issue among many, but this one, of course, is relevant and imminent. The Fifth Circuit has ordered the state to finalize a new congressional map by January 15th. That date is 1 week after Jeff Landry takes office, and he has to order the legislature to come back to the Capitol, and I think it's a week that has to happen, so they'd have to do the map in a day. And you could do that right now if you wanted with the current legislature. So what's going to happen?
I don't know yet what's going to happen, but it is not constitutionally possible for Jeff Landry, after he's sworn in, to call a session that could conclude its business in time to meet the January 15th deadline. But there are some other things at play. At the final part of that decision from the Fifth Circuit, it indicates that the trial judge, in this case Judge Dick here in the Middle District of Louisiana, could grant more time if she believes that the parties are in good faith in trying to come up with a map that would satisfy the courts. And she's already issued a decision that uses the February 5th deadline. So it's possible that she would indicate a willingness to go to understanding that the next legislature can't be called in by Governor Landry after he's inaugurated and meet the Fifth Circuit deadline. She could grant more time. But if she says, no, the Fifth Circuit said January the 15th, and it's going to be January the 15th, in order to meet that deadline, that's only possible if I call a session of the legislature. So I'm not saying that that's what I'm going to do, because we're going to see if there can be some guidance that comes out of the district court in the next several days that would tell us exactly how this is going to move forward.
How do you think this will evolve? It seems the courts have decided that there should be at least a, quote, opportunity district for a black candidate.
Well, first of all, that would be unsatisfactory to me and probably to the court at the end of the day if it was only an opportunity district. Our state is 1/3 black. We have 6 districts. It is obviously not just possible, but you can have more compact districts drawn with a second majority black district than the status quo. By making the 5th district a majority black district. That's exactly what should happen. That's why I vetoed the district maps that were drawn by the legislature to begin with. So it really is, it's about simple math, basic fairness, and the rule of law. So I do believe that it's going to happen. I don't think that the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Speaker, and the President, I don't believe they can prevail on the merits. I never have. But they can try to delay, because if they can delay the drawing of a new map long enough, then they get to run another election with a bad map. That's seems to me to be their plan. It's the only way that they can try to avoid having the map in place by this coming election, which is a year from now.
I think it wasn't you I talked to, it was somebody else who reminded me, and I think they're right, that when you won your legislative seat, it was in a black majority district, was it not, or close to it? Yeah.
It was.
How about that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I did, and it was a wonderful district to represent as well, and was a pretty good fit for it. Got reelected handsomely, and then won that district overwhelmingly when I ran for governor and then for reelection.
So you won in a black majority district, and we've had 5 straight mayors of Baton Rouge elected in a white majority parish, but albeit very close. The voting numbers are close, so it is possible, but you're saying in the ideal world and in the real world, in this case, it should be a black majority district.
Yeah, because you can show that it's possible. There are maps that were drawn that have a majority black district that's basically today's 5th district. And when you finish, you end up with a 5th district that is more compact. It doesn't go all the way through Washington Parish, and it's more compact. And then overall, all of the districts in that new map better meet all the redistricting principles for compactness and so forth. So absolutely, it can happen. It should happen. I believe it will happen. It's just a question of when, and I think that there's an incentive on the other side to just delay this as long as possible.
You said once, and I remember when you said it, you said you can't take politics out of politics, and we have a case in which the congressman in the district where we are right now, Garrett Graves, supported somebody else for governor. That could be a factor. After all, you can't take politics out of politics. Who gets nailed in this process? Somebody has to be the odd person out, it would seem.
Well, it remains to be seen, and of course, I think that question, in the context that you asked it, is better addressed to Jeff Landry than to me. I don't know exactly what the next map will look like. I do think that the majority black district that gets created primarily out of the existing 5th congressional district, not the district that Congressman Graves represents. But anytime you make adjustments to any districts, then all the district maps are sort of up for discussion, and so you just have to see what the will of the legislature is. Like you, I hear a lot of rumors, but I don't want to pass on what is just rank speculation on this radio program.
Michael in Baton Rouge, you're on with Governor John Bel Edwards. Michael, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. I just wanted to say I like to give praise when praise is due, and I think the governor has done an outstanding job as a governor of the state of Louisiana. And I'm especially happy about the thought of bringing the Amtrak train through Baton Rouge, being Baton Rouge is the capital city of the state of Louisiana. But other than that, I just want to give praise when praise is due. The governor did an outstanding job, Hoorah.
Michael, thank you for the call. I, too, am excited about restoring the Amtrak passenger rail between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and I think it's going to happen. It'll happen sometime in 2027. I feel really good about some grant applications that we have in place to upgrade the infrastructure so that becomes a reality, especially the bridge over the Bonnet-Carré Spillway that would allow the trains to travel at a faster speed. And then when we connect Baton Rouge and New Orleans, I think together they can compete as a super region against other parts of the country rather than competing against one another. And we'll have 2 stops here in Baton Rouge at the terminal, but also in South Baton Rouge in the medical district, a stop in Gonzales, stop in LaPlace, stop at the airport in Kenner, and maybe or maybe not another stop in Jefferson Parish before you get to the station there on Loyola in New Orleans. But I'm excited about that and what it's going to do. How great it would be to live in New Orleans and work in Baton Rouge, or vice versa, or to routinely entertain, or go to the airport and you take the train and you don't have to park your car in long-term parking for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever it is. I just think it makes a lot of sense. And by the way, you get people off of I-10, and that's a good thing as well.
James in Longview. Hello, James.
Hi,
Good
Jim.
afternoon.
Hi, Governor. Hi, Jim. Anyhow, I see that Louisiana's recently allowed paid parental leave for some state employees. I assume that includes paternal leave for new fathers. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Governor, and how it was paid for?
Yes. So we are following, I think, 32 other states in this paid family leave. We mirror the FMLA, the federal law that requires you to be employed for a year before you get the benefit of this. But if you've been employed by a year and you become a parent, adoptive parent, or foster parent, you qualify for 6 weeks of paid leave, but you have to take them within the first 12 weeks of that event. So the first 12 weeks after the birth of the child and so forth. And this is going to promote healthier mothers, healthier babies, bonding. We know that it'll help us recruit and retain employees. And I hear the music, and we may finish this answer up on the backside.
We'll talk about it and more. And if you'd like to join the conversation, 877-217-5757. This is show number 92 with Governor John Bel Edwards. There's a half hour to go if you'd like to get in under the wire. 877-217-5757 is your Ask the Governor number. And with fewer than 2 months left in office, the governor last week granted paid parental leave to state workers who wish to take time off following the birth, adoption, or fosterage of a child in their family. The benefit allows employees to do this for up to 6 weeks. Louisiana, the 33rd state to introduce paid parental leave to state employees. And Governor, some say this is long overdue, but others, of course, didn't want it to happen. In Louisiana, sometimes you have to appease the naysayers. You believe on the whole, though, this is a very good thing, and you were in the middle of your explanation when we went to the break.
Well, we follow the lead of 32 other states. This wasn't done on a whim. It was studied literally for years. The Civil Service Commission really approved it first for classified employees with a rule that I approved that's effective January the 1st. And as with all benefits, we typically have an executive order that mirrors the same benefit for the unclassified workers. And so I have an executive order that I signed for that. But we have worse maternal health outcomes than we would want, and worse outcomes when it comes to the births and the young babies in our state with respect to health. This is a way to address that, because if you have, for example, a mother and she's only got so much paid leave, and if she takes it to go to the doctor before the baby's born, it's not available for her after the baby's born. Typically, they will decide that they know they're going to need to stay home after the birth, and so they don't go to all of their visits before the birth. Well, that is bad for the mother. It's bad for the baby. And we know that this is a benefit that parents really appreciate, and it helps us to be competitive in the job market to attract and retain employees. Those employees are going to be more productive when they're at work because this is one more thing that they don't have to worry about. And so it's a no-brainer for me, and very happy to do it. And also we want to encourage private employers to do it. Well, you need to lead by example. It's a good thing for the 70,000 state employees, and that's a good place to start. And I think it's going to prove to be very effective over time. And I was very happy to sign that executive order and to approve the civil service rule.
Now, in recent programs during the session, you were supportive of a measure proposed by Representative Marino regarding the increase in pay for lawmakers.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, but a listener asked about increase in pay for statewide officials. The governor, if you're unaware, earns $130,000 a year. I think all the other statewide officers are $115,000 a year, which is a good living in Louisiana, but it's not in line with you make less than any of your cabinet secretaries. You're probably not even the top 100 among statewide officials when it comes to compensation. Should the governor earn more? now that you're about to leave?
Well, I don't want to say the governor should earn more. I think that periodically there have to be adjustments. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where the job doesn't attract as many people who are willing to run for it, and then the choice of the people is more limited than it should be. So I don't want to say that the governor. I think that I continue to believe that the legislature should be paid better, and I think all statewide elected officials. And you can do this with legislation that becomes effective after the next election, so that nobody is in effect giving themselves a raise. But I just think it has to happen occasionally, and if you don't do that, I think things get out of balance. And so I would like to see that on with respect to the legislature and with respect to the statewide elected officials.
Well, and governors often, when they leave office, they have opportunities. And obviously you're a talented person, as your predecessors have been. You're marketable. Many try to stay in politics. I remember Mark Shields saying the only thing that gets somebody out of politics at high levels is either the ballot box or the pine box. But you say you're probably not going to run again, and constitutionally you were not eligible to run for governor this time. But a listener this morning, in fact, is Robbie Hogan, the political scientist at LSU. He asked if you would refrain from serving on boards and commissions that you had authority over during your tenure as governor. Or is that something that you haven't thought about?
Meaning that if Jeff Landry or some future governor
I think
would appoint me, let's just say to the LSED, the Superdome Commission, or the Board of Supervisors at LSU. I don't know why I should say that I would refrain from serving if that service interested me and I thought I could be of value in doing it. I have no intention of doing that, but why would it be improper, and why would I say today that I wouldn't do that?
Well, I remember this came into play, and Robbie Hogan planted the seed, but it's not really a gubernatorial thing, but particularly like public service commissioners. It's not necessarily serving as on a board, but what if they go to work for the utilities they've regulated? That there's a fine line there between being a good public servant and maybe having a conflict of interest.
Yeah, but then you also have the flip side of that coin. People go into elective office because they are interested in certain things, and it may be that people run to the Public Service Commission because they have an interest. For example, maybe it would be in climate change and making sure we have more renewable electricity, and they do a stint on the Public Service Commission. You mean to tell me that they can't then go work trying to promote solar farms and windmills when it's been their life's work? It's what they're passionate about. I don't get that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we already have rules about certain periods of time that you can't, for example, as governor, if I wanted to lobby, and I don't, but if I wanted to lobby, I can't lobby the governor's office for 2 years. I'm not sure somebody would hire me to lobby Jeff Landry's office for the next 2 years, but I wouldn't do that. So, but beyond that, I just don't see anything improper about it.
Well, I think it's something that you have to take case by case. It appears, for example, like what's happened at the Supreme Court level, that is a problem. But those are sitting justices.
Yeah, right.
It'd be different if you were a sitting governor and you were being courted by industry. But as far as I know, your administration's probably had fewer problems than any other when it comes to ethics, and criminal activity. There haven't been any indictments of note. But what about the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the problems that they're having right now?
Yeah. So, I was kind of interested to see that they've developed a code of ethics to govern themselves. It doesn't make clear how it's enforced, and so forth. So it almost seems to be aspirational, and it certainly doesn't meet the moment, because we know that extravagant gifts have been lavished on sitting Supreme Court justices by individuals with business before the court. And so it just seems to me that more needs to be done there. Quite frankly, I'm agnostic as to whether the court imposes a real reforms on itself that are enforceable, or whether it comes from the Senate. But certainly, if the court isn't going to do it itself in a way that passes muster, then the Senate ought to do it. I think as a lawyer, it would be better for the court to do it. I really do believe that. I don't know that we can count on it, especially based on what we saw this week.
Jim and Araby. Jim, you're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bell Edwards. Hi, Jim.
Hi. First, I want to thank Governor for doing a fantastic job. I'm really going to miss you.
Thank you, Jim.
Also, my question is, I live in St. Bernard Parish, and everyone's running against the port. That's master planned for Violet. And to my knowledge, it's already a done deal because that's between New Orleans and, expanding capacity to remain competitive. So I kind of get it. But what I was wondering about is that there was in the master plan, a direct connection from Violet, where the port is to be, to I-10. And if I understand correctly, there's no funding for that, and I don't even believe there's funding for the environmental study.
One of the most important investments we can make in infrastructure in Louisiana is a new container terminal on the Mississippi River below the Crescent City connection, because the largest vessels in use in the world today that carry containers, when fully loaded, can't go under the bridge. So if we want to be competitive, if we want the Mississippi River to be the way that the world accesses the central 1/3 of the United States, if we want to maximize the competitive advantage we have in Louisiana over other states, this is something we simply have to do. It's very clear now that the one feasible, viable plan is to do that, as you mentioned, in Violet, as a partnership between the Port of New Orleans and the Port of St. Bernard. And quite frankly, there's $800 million of private capital lined up for that. We have to obviously put the difference up on the public side. But that container terminal cannot be successful. It will not be successful if we don't have a dedicated truck route, elevated, that connects the terminal to the interstate, as you mentioned. And so we have started the process of looking at that, the initial planning and design, and feasibility and so forth. And so that is something that I'm absolutely confident will happen while the terminal itself moves forward. Because you got to remember, when I became governor, we were almost complete on a $1 billion airport in Kenner, new terminal, and nobody had put a single dollar towards the connection to I-10. Well, just last month we went and cut the ribbon, and so I would not do that going forward with the container terminal. Both of those will be developed simultaneously. Those assurances have been given by me and by the Secretary of the Department of Transportation to the officials in St. Bernard, and you can look and see what's happening. The money that's being allocated, the efforts that's being undertaken by the state and by the Port of New Orleans, and you can see that we're sincere on that.
Kate in Baton Rouge. Kate, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor.
Governor, for the next 4 years, with the incoming legislative leaders, Senator Henry and Representative DeVilliers, what ideas would you like to share with them for working on the next 4 years?
Oh, Kate, first of all, I obviously know Senator Henry and Representative DeVilliers pretty well, having served with them for a long time. And Cameron and I were actually elected together to the House of Representatives back in 2007, started serving together in 2008. you know, obviously they have philosophical differences from me. What I would just ask them to do is to take a very objective and sober look at the state today, and in terms of its fiscal situation, the diversifying and growing economy, the lowest unemployment ever measured, the most people ever employed, the $50 billion in projects that have been announced in low and no carbon projects, and the economic forecast going forward that Lauren Scott came out with a few weeks ago, that is among the rosiest ever put out for Louisiana. And see our record investments in education, particularly early childhood and higher ed, and just on issue after issue, and see how well served the people of our state have been with the policies that brought all that to bear, relative and in contrast to the situation that existed before I became governor, and then resist the temptation to make decisions in the next couple of years that will resemble the decisions that were made in 2008 and 2009, that put our state on a course where we were disinvesting in our critical priorities more than we ever had before. And so that would be, and that's my suggestion for every legislator, I should say, and for the incoming administration as well. But I thank you so much for the call, Kate.
James in Baton Rouge. Hello, James. You're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Hello, Governor. Good to hear you again. You and I have traveled this last 10 years together. You've helped so much with the battles we've had to try to get equity among one of the major economic forces of our state, and that is our teachers' retirement system. Most people don't realize that we pour over almost $2.5 billion a year in the economy. But you've been with us. We're going to miss your steady hand.
Well, James, thank you. First of all, teachers are professionals. Teaching is a profession, and professionals shouldn't just be treated as such while they're actively employed, but retired as well, especially if you want more teachers to join the profession, and we have a shortage of that. But we have a moral obligation to meet our commitments, and the commitments we made through our pension systems, not just for teachers, but for state workers and more broadly, very, very important. And so I've always wanted to make sure that we did what was necessary to meet those commitments, and to do it in a way that would maximize the likelihood and the frequency of cost of living allowances without adding to the unfunded accrued liability. And I can tell you, we have made record payments since I've been governor to the unfunded accrued liability for all of our pension systems. And that's both because of the excess earnings, revenue, I should say, that we've had, but also because when the legislature decided in 1988, with the vote of the people, to put the unfunded accrued liability on a 40-year payout to erase it, it didn't create level payments, and it backloaded the heaviest payments that actually came due over the course of my 8 years. But we've got the situation well in hand. There is no crisis on our pension systems today, and I'm very happy that that's the case, because that makes it much more likely that future legislators, future governors, will continue to govern in a way that ensures that we meet our commitments.
Jeff in Baton Rouge. Hello, Jeff. You're on with Governor Edwards.
Good afternoon, Governor. I appreciate what you've done for the state of Louisiana in the last couple of years. You're going to be missed. My question or comment is about the upcoming, hopefully, designation of the Capitol Lakes as a Superfund site. So I'm curious as far as what your administration has been doing for making that push, which is desperately needed.
Well, Jeff, it's a great question, and we actually continue to test the water over the course of the 8 years that I've been governor for the presence of PCBs. There was a Westinghouse transformer manufacturing facility in close proximity, and unfortunately, decades ago, PCBs got into Capitol Lake. The hope and I guess the expectation was that over time, that the water the water quality would increase. We found out that that was not happening. And rather than just kick the can down the road and pretend we didn't have a problem, because quite frankly, it's embarrassing to acknowledge that perhaps the most polluted body of water in the state of Louisiana is Capitol Lake, that you can walk out the back door of the Capitol and throw a rock and hit it. But ignoring the problem isn't going to resolve it. So we decided to bring it to the attention of the administrator of the EPA, ask for the federal government's assistance, and this is due in part because years ago the state entered into a settlement with Westinghouse that was inadequate to the task of actually cleaning the water up and cleaning the lake up. And so we've asked that be put on the Superfund site. That is happening or has happened. And so we are going to have tremendous assistance from the federal government to fix that. And there's a couple of different ways to do it. They're all very, very expensive. But having the help of the federal government to remediate that site is going to be important, so that hopefully we can take down the signs warning people not to fish at Capitol Lake. Again, right there outside the back door of the state capitol.
One of 4 women stabbed in what has been termed a random attack, a knife attack at Louisiana Tech, has died. Annie Richardson is the victim. And Governor, I know you have followed this case closely since Monday.
Yeah, so the president of the university, Louisiana Tech University, Les Geis, and I have been in constant communication about this. It is tragic beyond belief, and no real motive. We just know that one person's dead, 3 injured, 2 of those very seriously, very sad. So please pray for the family of Miss Richardson.
We'll be back December 13th for the final show with Governor John Bel Edwards. Until then, stay safe and stay tuned.